What they didn't know, what they couldn't even imagine, was that this man carried a secret that would flip their world upside down. Because the man they mocked wasn't a criminal at all, he was the FBI director. How did it come to this moment? And what happened when the truth was revealed? Before the courtroom whispers and mocking laughter, he lived a life few could imagine. By day, he was a leader in one of the most powerful institutions in America, the FBI. But beyond the polished title and office walls, he carried with him the weight of a childhood shaped by struggle, resilience, and the sting of racism. He had fought his way up from neighborhoods where opportunity was scarce and prejudice was everywhere, climbing every rung with grit and determination. Yet despite his success, he knew the world still saw only his skin first. On that day, as he walked into court, he wasn't director or leader. To the eyes around him, he was just another black man, anonymous, presumed guilty, judged before being heard. He felt the stares, the smirks, the tension rising like smoke. And though he was no stranger to prejudice, he didn't yet know that this moment would strip away all illusions, exposing not only the biases of those who mocked him but the deep injustice that still ran through the system he served. The moment he stepped inside the courtroom, the air shifted. Conversations that had been low and steady grew louder, punctuated with laughter that wasn't hidden, it was aimed. He could feel it before he understood it. Eyes narrowing, heads tilting, whispers turning into chuckles. Then came the outright smirks, not because of anything he had done, not because of the case at hand, but simply because of who he was, a black man standing at the defendant's table. The guards exchanged looks, shaking their heads as though they already knew the ending of his story. A few officers in the back leaned over and whispered with mocking grins, their laughter sharp enough to cut through the silence of the room. Even the judge's slight raise of the eyebrow carried a message: you don't belong here. Every detail seemed designed to remind him that, no matter how far he had climbed, society was eager to drag him back down. Inside, he felt the storm building. This was more than insult, it was exposure. He wasn't being seen as a man of authority, not as someone who had dedicated his life to protecting the very people now ridiculing him. To them, he was just another stereotype, another statistic, and that realization lit a fire. The prosecution shuffled papers, dragging the moment out, as if to stretch the spectacle for as long as possible. Each second of mockery pressed harder against his pride. The courtroom wasn't just laughing at him. It was laughing at every struggle he had endured to get here, every racist remark in childhood, every door slammed in his face, every moment when survival meant swallowing his pride. Yet, he stayed quiet. He waited. His silence only made them bolder. One guard muttered just loud enough, "Guess he finally got caught." Another chuckled. "They're all the same." The sound of it rippled through the room like gasoline waiting for a spark. And then it came. A statement so sharp, so cruel, that the entire courtroom erupted in laughter. He stood frozen, the walls echoing with the sound of prejudice. But what they didn't know, what none of them could have guessed, was that the man they mocked wasn't a criminal at all. He was their superior, their leader, the very person whose signature could decide their careers. The rising anger in his chest hardened into resolve. He wasn't just going to endure this moment, he was about to turn it upside down. The laughter wouldn't last forever, because in just a few moments, the truth was going to shatter every assumption, every prejudice, and every smug grin in that room. And when it did, none of them would ever forget. The laughter finally died down when the judge called for silence. Papers rustled, chairs creaked, but the smirks lingered. Everyone was waiting for the defendant to stumble, to beg, to break under the weight of shame. But instead, he straightened his back, his presence filling the room in a way that demanded attention. Then, slowly, he reached into his jacket, not hurried, not nervous, but deliberate. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Hands hovered near holsters, and for a split second, the air froze. Everyone expected desperation. What they got was revelation. He pulled out a single leather wallet. Inside, gleaming against the fluorescent light, was a badge. But not just any badge, the golden seal of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The courtroom erupted, but this time, not in laughter. Whispers turned into silence, and silence turned into shock. Every officer who had mocked him stiffened. The guards who had rolled their eyes were suddenly stone-faced. The judge's lips parted, eyes wide, as though the floor beneath had just disappeared. And standing there, calm yet unshakably firm, he let the truth sink in. He wasn't a criminal. He wasn't even just another agent. He was the director of the FBI. The very system that had ridiculed him was now bowing, whether it wanted to or not. For a moment, no one breathed. The power dynamic had flipped in an instant, and the weight of their prejudice hung heavy in the air. He let the silence drag, making them feel every ounce of the humiliation they had tried to inflict on him. And then, with a steady gaze that seemed to pierce through every uniform in the room, he delivered a truth that none of them could ever laugh away. The game was over. The silence in that courtroom was louder than any gavel. The same officers who had mocked him now sat frozen, their arrogance stripped away in an instant. No apologies came, no quick excuses, just the raw, uncomfortable truth of what prejudice had cost them. They had judged him not by his character, not by his work, but by the color of his skin. And they were wrong. He walked out that day with his head high, not because he needed their validation, but because he had forced them to see what they refused to acknowledge, that racism runs deep, even in the very institutions meant to uphold justice. For him, the humiliation turned into a moment of power. But what about the countless others who never get that chance? The men and women who are mocked, silenced, or destroyed before anyone ever learns their truth. This wasn't just one man's story. It was a reflection of an ugly reality that talent, success, and even authority are too often overshadowed by prejudice. He carried that weight with him, not as a burden, but as a reminder. Every smirk, every insult, every doubt only fueled his mission to change a system that too often devalues lives based on skin, color. And here's the question we're left with. How many more brilliant minds will be dismissed? How many more lives shattered before we finally confront the truth? Because the fight against racism doesn't end in a courtroom. It continues in every interaction, every workplace, every decision we make. And maybe, just maybe, this story will remind us to look deeper, to judge less, and to finally stand for the justice we claim to believe in. So now I ask you, will you be part of that change, or will you let history repeat itself? This wasn't just a story about one person, it was a mirror held up to society. A reminder that silence allows injustice to breathe, and courage is what cuts through it. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you believe these stories matter, like this video, subscribe for more, and join the conversation in the comments. Together, we can spark the change the world so desperately needs. Thank you for watching.